Hello, my name is Jack O'Keeffe. I'm a spiritual teacher and a writer and a founding member of the Association for Spiritual Integrity. Today, I'd like to talk to you about phenomenal consciousness. For thousands of years, in scripture and in practices, spiritual teachers and spiritual seekers have been working to arrive at phenomenal consciousness within their psyche, to shift through non-local lenses of perception and to experience directly, immediately, phenomenal consciousness. In doing so, we arrive at a knowing, a realization that phenomenal consciousness is fundamental. The experience of phenomenal consciousness is non-local. And this is central to what this talk is about. I want to explain why it is non-local and the implications of that. Spiritual experience and consciousness. Phenomenal consciousness, I'm going to call primary consciousness. I think it's a better term for what I want to explain. Primary consciousness. We say it's a spiritual experience. However, the spiritual experience can only happen when the personal I, the subjective local lens of perception, is not running. And so from that point of view, we say it's impersonal because the me, myself, I is not in view. It actually doesn't exist. That lens of perception is not active. And in effect, there is no I. Your memory will tell you afterwards that I experienced primary, fundamental consciousness. But you know that it's memory only that adds in the ownership of the personal I to it. Primary consciousness, we say it's impersonal. We say there's a direct experience. Phenomenal consciousness. What happens when we experience it is that there's a realization that that is more of what we are than the me, myself, I, Jack O'Keeffe, woman, time, space. We see that those points of view, those layered understandings of space, of time, of stories, personal identity, self-referencing network, these layers of other perceptions are on top of a fundamental understanding of primary consciousness. And that primary consciousness shows up to be more authentically what we are than any story that's time-based, that's conditioned by our thinking. Secondary consciousness is my capacity to be conscious. So that's my personal consciousness. It's an indirect experience and it happens to me. The split between the two is essential because secondary consciousness gives me an experience. Primary consciousness, if the me wants to experience primary consciousness, it can't show up. It's there fundamentally all the time, outside of time. And what blocks it is running the me perceiving mechanism. In the absence of the personal lens of perception, the secondary consciousness, primary consciousness is there. Primary consciousness is the work of spirituality. Secondary consciousness is the work of religion. That difference is important. So spirituality is experience-based. It's got to do with an unfolding, with realizing. It's not learning, it's not new conditioning, it's more eureka moment in terms of like you're walking on the beach and you get this idea that you were never ever thinking about some problem and lo and behold you see the solution. It's more that happening upon something that is open, that is freeing. It's like the clouds part. It's a direct experience and it's like, oh, that's the truth underneath it. That's the way forward. That's what is. And so the spiritual experience is very different. It's a realization. Religion, on the other hand, it claims certain things to be true. And beliefs in these claims are what are encouraged. Entirely different things. I don't know how they ever got mixed up, but they did. Existence is not fundamental. This is very important, and I think a reason why existence is clouding out the recognition of primary consciousness, phenomenal consciousness. Existence, as we peel back layers of perception, the me, myself, I go deeper into the stillness where there is no me running, where you can see that your brain does the me, myself, I. And we drop deeper, you can say, into observer, into the mindfulness state. And then we go into being, the human doing, the human being. We're in the being layer, and there's what is. And you can stand there in this is the ground of my being. In that layer, existence shows itself to be also a concept that your identity as a human being is resting upon. We want to imagine that we are real and here and now, and we are, but we have to turn on the localized perceiving mechanism in order for that to be true. When you go deeper than the localized perceiving mechanism and your spiritual journey takes you there, you discover that the idea that you are is also based on a concept believed into the structure, the matrix of what creates this life that we call. And so it's important that existence is not valid at all in terms of being a baseline or fundamental for something. We're missing the point. Consciousness is much deeper than that. Primary consciousness reveals existence itself as a pure concept, without anything needing to have the attribute of existing. Now we've gone from I exist to existence itself as a pure concept, which can be seen from the fundamental, pure, phenomenal, primary consciousness. Secondary consciousness, I exist. So there's the personal ownership. To find the fundamental baseline consciousness that spirituality points towards for millennia, the fact that I want to get it is going to eclipse the perceiving of what is deeper than I. Primary consciousness is never personal. It's in the absence of the personal that it has enough space to show up, that our attention is available. So, how does the direct experience, the immediate experience, not the experiencer, but the immediate experience of primary consciousness become data? And this is where I feel the overlap is with science. Here's my question. Can science broaden its paradigm to include primary consciousness, which is known only through direct experience, through, not indirectly through the me, but directly, consciousness showing itself to itself? How does this direct experience become data? I don't have the answer, but what I do know is that the instruments that measure the external objectified world are not the right tools because they're based in subject-object perception. The tools are incorrect. If the tools can be abandoned and this talk in some way opens something for a viewer, that would be wonderful. If it's possible to think outside the box, can the paradigm be broadened? I don't know what that looks like. Spirituality offers pointers to primary consciousness, like I'm doing right now, techniques and teachings that break down the presupposition of collective beliefs, such as me, myself, I, time, space, existence itself. And we do see that these are concepts that are being believed into my perception of the world, and I'm creating the world with these collectively agreed beliefs. That doesn't make them true. It doesn't make them true at all. It makes them valid in order to make the world seem real so that I can function. That's all. And science, on the other hand, offers data that proves or disproves. What it could be useful for is to prove or disprove what's symbolic, myth, superstition, hyperbolic, from the perspective of spiritual seekers. I think there's certain things that science can blow out for us that we haven't seen so far. I would also like science to how do we turn this into language that's not so nebulous, and how can it be turned into data? I know there's a way, we're just not there yet, and the spiritual sector is not equipped with that way of approaching things. Here's the journey, if I can point it out. It's looking like it's upwards. However, for some people it's going backwards, which I think has to do with using different parts of the brain in order to translate what is fundamental consciousness, primary consciousness. How does that show up or reflect in our brain? Because our brain is not the source of it. Our brain is the source of the me, myself, I, and space and time. However, at another point, it's not in the body. The origin is not in the body, but the effect of it is in the body. So for some people, it's the stepping back is where they find it. And for other people, it's about going downward. It's directional, which is kind of bizarre. I don't know why, but it is. For the sake of this chart, it's above. So looking at the bottom of it, me, mine, me, myself, I, me and my world. Then we can observe. Yeah, I'm sitting here. I can observe. I have an observing capacity that sees me talking right now. When we go deeper than that, we come into the beingness. I exist. I am. Deeper than that is the timeline. Timeline shows up as an arc. And then it's possible to stop it, and it goes forward and it goes backwards. Once you've gone deep enough into the primary fundamental layer of pure consciousness, the timeline comes in and out. Every moment is now. You can see that this was all a replay. You can see the timeline from different zones. It's got nothing at all to do with space. Space breaks up at a deeper time. So time and space, that needs to be decoupled. Deeper than the timeline, okay, we come into timelessness. There is a sense of presence here, of knowingness where there's nothing to know. It's knowingness itself. There is no knower and knowledge, that triad, a knower, knowing, knowledge. The subject object of the knower and knowledge collapses. And at this layer of perception, there's just knowingness showing up. Deeper than that, it feels like spaciousness. We're into pure awareness, pure spaciousness. In spiritual words, it's called pure awareness. Really, it's a felt sense of spaciousness, which kind of arises. You don't look for it, you don't create it, but there's like, whoa. The experience of vastness is how the body registers this viewing point. Here, the concept of space is valid because space is the first concept. It's the rollout, the first phenomenal, contextual concept on which other ones are built. Now, deeper than that, we have primary consciousness, and it's not a concept. And that's the bummer. Now, it's a concept as I'm talking about it, but in its essence, it's not a concept. And that's the shift that has to be seen to be true. In spirituality, the term awakening, self-realization, has to do with this layer where the identity with primary consciousness happens. And that's what I am. That's my true nature. That's my essence. And most spiritual paths stop here with identification. That's my true nature. That's what I really am. And in form, the other lens of perception create me and the personal, but it's illusory. And illusory is the Buddhist term for it, or it's transient, other traditions would say. What happens deeper than that? Very few go deeper than that. I mean, really very few go deeper than that. The identification with true nature, with baseline. You could call that God too. Absolute, Brahman, depends what tradition. the identity with that goes, but that's very rare. We're left with consciousness that cannot know itself. It's such a fundamental that it actually can't know itself. However, it is known. You can drop back there and it is known, but you can't bring yourself there or your capacities to know it. It's almost like it's so fundamental that it can't turn around and see itself. It doesn't see itself. That's too much movement. That's movement such as space, time, and identification, and me, myself, I, and the building of my movie that happens. To look at it another way, if we look at it going backwards, so the stuff of life, and you know, I'm no scientist, but maybe that's particles, because the observing, perceiving capacity has to be active. Like when you're in deep sleep, this perception observer is not active and there ain't no life. So the observing capacity creates my life. Looking back from that, the field of potentiality, go back. Disconnect from the lenses, the overlays that we all learned how to build as a child to discover, oh, there's you, me, you have a name, I have a name, oh, and all these caked in very often layers of perception were put into place as if what they produce is reality. It's not at all. It's a subjective viewpoint that has nothing at all to do with the truth of your being, or deeper than that, the fundamental primary consciousness. Behind the timeline, the I am, where we identify with I exist, the amness, the verb being. This is the being. Then we've got the pure I, that it's all I, unified field. There is only one field. Unified field kicks in here. We call it non-dual. The experience is spaciousness, vastness, because it's broad and it's wide open. Because there's no limits, because everything is interconnected. Seen and unseen, form and formless. Deeper than that, that singularity, that unified field is one too many. It's one too many. That leads us into primary consciousness. Here's my definition. Consciousness is the self-contained capacity that manifests form and formlessness and reflects its own creation unto itself. It has the capacity to imagine its own existence. It includes individual consciousness, which comprises the dreaming and waking states. Looking back on this last slide, the fundamental, primary, phenomenal consciousness. It has a capacity, it doesn't even know itself here. However, it has a capacity to show up with a sense of emptiness, to show up as one, to show up as a one who can reflect on itself and recognize that it is, and we have the concept of existence. And it can go from that sense of vast spaciousness and that unified field into time, which appears as a dot, and it opens up into an arc. And from there we have phenomena, and we have the brain comes in with the capacity to create difference and to label and to see patterns and to create patterns. All the while it is primary, fundamental consciousness birthing, reflecting itself to itself. There is no external creator. It comes from and returns to. Nothing is lost or gained ever. And that's the freedom of spirituality. That pure, primary, fundamental consciousness is creating and destroying itself continually. Why? Well, there's no why that exists back there. The why can only exist down here in time and space, where we ask questions like that. And so consciousness is self-contained. It's a capacity that manifests form and formless and reflects its own creation unto itself. You see, it never doesn't lose or gain in anything it creates, no matter how dark or how evil and how clear and light and open. It doesn't lose or gain. It's only its own substance at all times, showing up in different forms. And so it has the capacity to imagine its own existence and to believe its own creations to be real. That's the beauty. That's the beauty of awakening, spiritually awakening. That's my timer. And so phenomenal consciousness, it's all about how we approach it. This is an invitation to collaborate between science's expertise in discovering data and hard facts with the spiritual pursuit of unearthing that which is prior to form and phenomenal measuring standards. Together, we can expand the understanding of consciousness in a way that neither science nor spirituality has been able to convey on its own. Thank you for your time.